are you going to sit?
Why not? Hello, everybody. How are you?
Great.
How are you?
Great.
Are you great, Cheryl Dorsey?
So great.
Perfect. All right. Now, can you replicate that level of enthusiasm? How are you?
Great.
Okay. Now I'm revved up. This is the second in our series of Echoing Green's Citizenship Now series. And tonight we're going to talk about what? Education. How many of you are fired up about education? Woo. All right. All right. So I want to say thank you to Echoing Green for bringing this series to us. Not only is it our second night, it's our second year, right? So thanks to Echoing Green, thanks to Cheryl Dorsey, thanks to Jana. Where is she? Where's Lindsay? Where are you, Lindsay? She's doing her social media thing. There she is. Hey, all right. So thanks to all of you. Tonight we're talking about education, which is the single biggest indicator of employment, economic status, and it's a major factor in recidivism. I know this because my mother was a teacher for 40 years, a public school teacher. We're going to talk about these things, the schools to prison pipeline. We're going to talk about economic status. We're going to talk about employment with our Echoing Green fellows. So let's not delay any longer with me talking. Let's bring them out. First, Quardine Lewis Allen. He's the founder of Made in Brownsville, where he is from. Made in Brownsville creates a pipeline of talent to careers in design and tech, tackling the issues of minority underrepresentation and youth unemployment. Welcome, Quardine.
Thank you.
Do I need this anymore, Ricardo? Can I use this? Okay, so that is Quardine Lewis Allen. And we'll hear more from him in just a minute. James Monteiro is the founder and director of Reentry Campus, which works both within and outside the adult correctional institution of Rhode Island to ensure that people have a pathway to a college degree upon release, a pathway that is integrated into necessary support systems. Welcome, James.
Thank you.
And Iscaira Jimenez is the founder and CEO of LaborX, which connects people left out of the knowledge economy to jobs in tech. It has been called the LinkedIn for the linked out. I like that. I was excited to say that. Iscaira, welcome.
Thank you.
And welcome to all three of you. So all of you have been highly motivated by personal experiences, as I went over your backgrounds and bios. Iscaira, let's start with you. Tell us about what inspired you and motivated you to found LaborX, and tell us about how it works and what it does.
Sure. So LaborX is really a labor of love, part of the reason why we came up with the name. And I was motivated to start it because as the youngest of an immigrant family of 5 children, who came here when she was really young, but also watched her brother who came here when he was 17, kind of at that inflection point where you're either getting ready or, according to the traditional model, you should be getting ready to graduate high school, go to college, get a job, so forth goes the American dream. And kind of seeing that shattered for him. He came here as an honor student, just 3 months left to graduate. That's when the visa came for him. And he was left back to the 9th grade. So saw the public education system fail him. Then I saw him struggle to find living wage work to support himself and his family. Saw the labor system fail him. Then he got arrested. Saw the justice system fail him, and then he got deported, and then saw the immigration system fail him. And so I wasn't thinking, back then, like these were all systems failing my brother. I just kept thinking, why did we have such divergent pathways? I went to Columbia, I went to MIT, and always kept asking myself, the further ahead I go, the further I get from people in my community and my family. And I'm no different. I'm hardworking. I don't think I'm smarter necessarily. But for whatever reason, I became an exception. And I thought that me doing well wasn't enough for me, or even my family doing well wasn't enough. And so I started thinking, as I got older, how do we drive systems change for people like my brother, who's being failed by multiple systems in this country? And that led me to LaborX. I was working at a startup at the time, an education startup, running after-school programs in low-performing schools, thinking that helping someone like my brother, let's say, do well on his standardized tests, get him back on track, and then saw so many people who were going to graduate but weren't going to go to college, who were going to graduate, go to college, but weren't going to complete college, or who were going to drop out and not, and just felt like I wanted to do something about that. And also, as an employer, I had a really hard time finding the type of staff that I needed to run these programs. So we hired teachers from the school. That wasn't hard. But the program staff that made sure that students showed up every day for after-school programs, those were parent leaders that weren't on LinkedIn, weren't on Indeed, weren't on Craigslist. I'm like, how do I find this type of talent to make these programs thrive? So those are the two reasons that led me to found LaborX.
Thank you for sharing that. So, James, it's interesting because she talked about her brother's experience with these systems, right? And one, of course, was the criminal justice system. And you have an extremely personal experience with the system. And now you have Reentry Campus. So tell us about that journey.
Dropped out of school in the 8th grade as a result of that choice, and then spending the next 20 years of my life in and out of prison up and down the East Coast. First time somebody goes to prison, I can speak for myself. I was done. I didn't want no more of that. I was scared to death. I was released, and the truth of the matter is I had nothing to stand on. Always ended up trying to compensate my income and ended up going right back to prison. Last time I was incarcerated, I was just, that's it. My concern at that time wasn't, because I was always like, how am I going to get out of here? How am I going to get out of here? And the concern more so was, okay, how am I going to be able to stay out of here? And I just remember I was released December 10th, 2009. And I remember just prior to that watching Obama do his first State of the Union address. And it was just like me and this other guy staring up at the TV in the day room while everybody else, they're just playing cards and doing what they're doing. And he said, each American in this country is going to have to commit to at least 2 more years of education. And I remember I was like, this is the first time I was ever proud of my life to be an American. I have to say that. But I knew, because I was scared. I was leaving Baltimore and I was coming back to Rhode Island in a time where our economy was shattered. And Rhode Island's was like the worst of the worst. And I was like, what am I going to do? I went back to school. I got my GED, got my associate's degree. And when I came home, I tried to get a job in my field, but the only thing which was substance abuse counseling. I knew this was a field that I can get into. And everything in that field was like bachelor's degree and above. And I was like, okay, I need to get back into school because I need to commit to that at least 2 more years. And it was just difficult. It was near impossible for me to get back into school. Because, we could check, we get rid of checking the box on the applications for employment, but in higher institutions of education, there is still the box that we have to check to go to school. And I remember I took a job. It was the first job I got was $5 an hour job. I was being exploited. I couldn't afford not to be exploited, so I took the job because in my mind I was going to pay at least one of the bills. And by God's grace, I got back into school. And I ended up finishing my bachelor's degree in 1.5 years. And I haven't had to look back since. I have what I like to call is true freedom right now, because if I don't want to work somewhere, the truth of the matter is I really don't have to work there, because I know I'm fully capable of competing and being able to get another job. As a matter of fact, this stage in my life, I'm fully capable of creating my own employment. And when you look back, it's like Steve Jobs says, you can't connect the dots going forwards. You have to look backwards. You connect the dots. It's only right that I would want that for somebody else. You know what I mean? It's one thing to be locked up in prison. Everybody's on the same playing field. It's easy. It's very difficult to be locked out of society. It's very difficult to go to, they do water fire in Providence. It's very difficult to go to water fire and know that you're priced out of everything because you can't afford to participate. It's very difficult to walk by the restaurants in the neighborhood and know that you're priced out of that. And then what's even more so difficult is knowing that I'm no longer priced out of it, but everybody I know is. So, I mean, that's the reason why I created the Reentry Campus, because it's only right that I would want that for somebody else, to have true freedom.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, Cordine, Lewis Allen. Made in Brownsville, which you were.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's right.
To my knowledge, yeah.
I guess that's part of the reason you created Made in Brownsville, but what else?
I mean, for context, for the folks who don't know what Brownsville is, Brownsville's in Brooklyn, and I just use an Alfred Kazin quote. He wrote a book. He's like, Brownsville is a place that measures all success in your ability to get away from it. That was an audible. I, at a pretty young age, at age 5, I lost my uncle to gun violence in Brownsville, and I think as opposed to being traumatized by that situation, I tried to make a passion out of it. So I wanted to make public space better in my neighborhood so that maybe crime would improve, would decrease, and social interactions would be better, which is pretty naive for an 8-year-old. I think at that point is when I committed to architecture because my mom wouldn't let me be a comedian. And so I got to, and so I guess there were just like several moments in my path to architecture that made me realize I needed someone else. I needed someone. Like when I was in high school, I was applying for colleges, and I was like, I'm going to Cornell, and I didn't complete my applications to Cornell and all these other schools because at that time it was like the year before you can give in PDF portfolios. So it was like they still wanted a projector slide, and I had to get all these big sheets of paper with my drawings on it made into projector slides, and I didn't know where to go, and I didn't know that I could ask someone. So I didn't get into Cornell. But I ended up at an amazing institution in SUNY Buffalo, and got to the end of that, and now I'm looking for a job, and I come back to Brooklyn, and I found a black architect. And just, which is rare because like less than 2% of licensed architects is black, right? And I was like, hey, can I work for you? And he was like, this looks great, but you should go to a school with a better name. And I was like, oh, okay. Like my heart sank a little bit. So I didn't get that job, and I was like, okay, well I'll apply for all the schools that I'd want to go to that have a better name. So I applied to the Harvards and the Columbias and all these places, and I got in, except for Columbia. I went to Harvard, but I would have only applied because of him, right? That person that was there, that looked like me in the field that I wanted, that told me to do something that I didn't think I could do. At Harvard, I went and studied abroad in Nigeria, or worked abroad in Nigeria for a gentleman who got really wealthy and wanted to give back to his community by building a city, and he brought in us as interns I was like an architecture intern building eco-sustainable, affordable housing for this new village that he was creating for the folks that he cared about most. And I was like, I could do that, maybe, because he looks like me and he's doing it for himself. So, I came back to work in the city, and I was one of 2 black people at the architecture firm that I worked at. It's like 600 people that worked there. And I saw that there was a space that needed to be filled in terms of pipelining people that look like me into these professions of design and technology. And I found that ever present when I got back to the neighborhood and started working and doing community organizing and talking to people, and realized that, yeah, you can make the buildings better, but actually these kids need jobs. They need jobs, and that would actually impact public safety more than, you know, refurbished public housing, for instance. So I was like, well, why can't we do both? So you know, Made in Brownsville comes from a place of wanting to engage young people in community development and creating campaigns for healthy, active living and anti-violence, so that they're the civic leaders for their community, and building a portfolio of work that impacts their neighbors, right? At the same time, they're building a portfolio that makes them, you know, 10 times better than any applicant that's going for a creative agency job outside of the neighborhood. So it's kind of, I'm trying to flip the model of saying, you know, your success isn't how well it is you get to, how good you are at getting away from the neighborhood. It's about how much you can give back to the neighborhood. Yeah.
But you did go away for a bit. Can you say a little bit more about your time abroad?
Yeah.
And how that informs your current work in your old neighborhood and your new neighborhood, your current neighborhood,
Yeah.
your home?
Well, I mean, there was.
What did you learn and what did you take away that you use in your current work, Made in Brownsville?
I think that it was kind of weird. I spent 3 months in like rural Nigeria, like taking an hour-long bus ride to a boat to an island that was an hour long by boat, and we couldn't shop for our own food and that kind of thing, and we were in this kind of like mansion next to a hut that someone was, you know, that was like they're farming. It was just that dichotomy was jarring.
Right.
It kind of like showed a huge income gap that I reflected with in my own community. But then right after Nigeria, I was in Paris, and you know, most lavish kind of, you know, urbanization, and that I felt polarized in that instance of wanting to kind of like give people access to spaces where people deserve design, and are usually left out of the discussions about like how to access design for themselves and for the communities, because they don't have the tools with which to make a vision for what their community can look like. You know, by and large, you know, there's not a boulangerie down the block from us because we don't all have the access to an architect that can design the space for us with the idea that we have, but they can put it to paper so that we can bring it to a bank with a business plan to make it a reality. So I think that there was some learning there for me in terms of like, yeah.
Great. And James, you talked about pursuing your degree. Did you begin working on your degree while behind bars? And did the school you explain for people how that works, how accessible that is for most inmates, if at all, and do programs differ for those students who are in prison than those who are formerly incarcerated? Explain the educational process for those who want to pursue an education, who either have a record or who are behind bars currently.
I'm laughing and I'm tearing up because I probably did not take the most traditional route inside prison for education. I registered for school as if I was not incarcerated.
Right. And did they know you were incarcerated?
The school?
Yeah.
No. I took online courses that were mailed up through correspondence packs. I was responsible for writing my papers and mailing them in at a certain time. I was given a syllabus with like deadlines and everything. And then they would give me these open book tests during the course of the semester that I would have to log on to the computer and type my answers in. But I had no computer. And, well, we had a computer, just no internet access. So I'd call my girlfriend, Colette. She would log onto the computer, and I would tell her the answer to number 1 is B.
Wow.
And she would log all of my answers into the computer. And then when midterms and finals came, I ran down to the GED professor, and I says, can you please just proctor my exams for me? I said, I got them to mail them to you. And he said yes, and he put me off in a room by myself because I was probably the only one in Baltimore, Maryland City Penn taking college courses at the time. And he gave me my exam, and I would bring it back and I'd give it to him, and he would ship it out, and that's how I got my associate's degree in prison. Yes.
That's a fabulous story.
Well done.
It's kind of crazy because I'm not, I mean, when you're doing time, you're doing a lot of time, people, it's very hard to hold on to relationships, things that, so I'm not with that person anymore. I've since remarried. I'm happily married. But if I did not have that support on the outside, I would not have been able to go back to school. The sad thing about it is another reason where the Reentry Campus came from was that I finished my associate's degree. I finished it rapidly because there's not much to do in prison. I'm not lifting weights anymore. I just was done with all that stuff. I was more concerned, how am I going to stay out of here? I finished my associate's degree, and I had to sit around that prison for another 2.5, 3 years, waiting to be released so I can finish, so I can go further. The cost from associate's degree to bachelor's degree ballooned significantly. Right. I had to pay for my courses because there's no student aid for people while they're incarcerated. So we'd pick up papers on the highway for $3 a day. I got my brother to send me a few dollars here and there. Whoever I could, I pieced together an associate's degree. But when I tried to go further, it was out of my reach. So this is what's happening across America. There's 85,000 people taking college courses behind walls. Majority of them are self-paying. They are self-paying. This is at the associate degree level, and if you looked at the graph, you will notice that once that goes to bachelor's degree level, that 85,000 drops significantly. Drops significantly. And then upon release, we don't even know who's finishing.
Right.
We don't know what's happening. It's very difficult for you to be able to finish a college education behind the walls. So across the country, yes, education is happening. Yes, we know that education is proven to reduce recidivism. This is without a shadow of a doubt. Rand did a 30-year study. There's all kinds of test studies. We know education will drop the numbers of recidivism significantly. The only thing is we don't know if we're actually enabling a pathway for these individuals to finish. So. This is, I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. You did. And Iskata, something you said about, you used the phrase held back when you were talking about your brother. Now a lot of people say repeat. But either way, terribly, terribly tragic impact on his life. Did you repeat? And if so, what was the impact on your life?
Yeah, so I did, but for different reasons. So when I came, I was actually ahead. I started school in the Dominican Republic when I was 3. So by the time I came here, I was 4. I was in the first grade over there. They put me so I did the first grade in the Dominican Republic, and then I did it here, and then I went back to the Dominican Republic and did the first grade. And then when I came back, I thought I was going to do it again, and they moved me to second. And so what that did for me actually was give me an advantage and a heads up, because I was like, oh my God, I know the first grade, backwards and forwards now. And so I was a little older, a year older than my classmates as a result of this shuffling. But I was ahead of my class also. And so it played to my advantage when it happened that early on. Whereas for my brother, it had devastating effects for him when he was transitioning from, being a young adult to an adult.
And how old was he when he came?
So he was 17 and a half.
Oh, totally different.
And so he came, so my sister and I, we were the youngest. We came with my mom when she first got her visa. They came, 5 years later when she was able to petition for them. And so they were in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade back home. They were all put in the 9th grade. So for my sister, who's the middle child, losing a year wasn't a big deal, and she was actually able to make it up. She went to Lehman College. She's an educator now.
Wow.
My other brother, too, was able to make up some of that time, went to Bronx Community College. But for him, he stuck it out for 2 years, and he's like, doing 4 years again just makes no sense for me. He started a family. He needed to take care of that family. And so that forced him to enter the workforce. He, worked at a food truck with my mom, packing groceries, got his first, paid job packing candy at, a Mars factory in the South Bronx. And he worked, from midnight to 8 a.m. So it had very different effects on us being held back.
Yeah. You mentioned that Mars factory. So do you think the shift away from manufacturing jobs, I see you nodding, over, say, the last 15, 20 years has added an urgency and significance to your work in education? I guess I could ask all of you this question. Are we seeing more people either going back to school or getting additional training later in life, or change to the way we educate people? Obviously, technology also plays a big role. What's your thought?
Yeah, I think every industry is at the mercy of technology, automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning. And so, our education system was designed for the industrial era to kind of teach people to do one thing. There were assembly lines, and now there are machines who do one or two or three things. And so what we need to learn is how to build those machines, how to repair them, how to make them better. And that now is a lifelong learning process. So it's kind of how we need to learn now. So I think, the model of going to school for 4 years is not going to be very relevant going forward in the future. What I see and what excites me a lot, and this is the work that we do, is a lot of programs, like the work you're doing, some of the boot camps that are being, hyper specific over a 3-month period, 6 months, even a year, giving people baseline skills where they can then go into the workforce and kind of figure out how to apply those skills and then come back, right? So that's the kind of education system that I see serving folks who can come in and out and have education as they need it. Not to say, that the foundational critical thinking skills that many schools aim to teach us, when they do, great, we graduate critical thinkers, great communicators, but I think a lot of it is missing, and it's, a lot of education is not being defined by the real world, by employers. And employers are no longer investing in training their own people, so it's kind of been dumped to the government, and they haven't necessarily done the best job. It's stigmatized here too to not have a degree, to have, a different type of credential, a certification. And you see other countries around the world, in Europe and other places, have really strong, robust, apprenticeship systems and other systems. And it's like, when are we going to get with the program in this country? A job is a job. There's dignity in however you earn a living. Why can't our education system kind of keep up with the needs of folks?
Right, and I see you want to jump in. I mean, you're all about taking people to where they can find a livable wage, right?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of talk about the gig economy for millennials, and having multiple jobs or creating their own jobs. And, to speak about Europeans' economies, they're further along because they're a little bit older, and you can see in the cities that there's a lot more storefronts with boutique, design firms, like 1 or 2 people design firms, because they're way of vetting or contracting allows for smaller guys to win in certain design competitions and things of that nature. Whereas here, you see a lot of big jobs going to bigger firms, right? And it's a very kind of, it gets smaller the higher you go. So the opportunity that would be catalytic for certain people and growing their businesses isn't really afforded to those without, a longevity of access to those types of opportunities that marginalized communities have been left out of in this country.
So, James, let me ask you, as the economy changes, globally and here, how do you counsel your clients to explain the gaps in their resume, I guess they just they have to be open, direct, and honest about where they're coming from? I mean, what is your role in advising them?
In regards to the resume?
And in regards to moving forward?
I always tell people that if you worked inside prison, that work experience counts. You have individuals inside prison that will serve probably around 2,000 or 3,000 people a day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the average restaurant out here does not serve 2,000 or 3,000 people a day. So your skills are probably a lot more advanced than the person that you will see working in a restaurant here. And I don't think that people understand the connection and the transferable skills that they have. I spent 6.5 years working in the Employment Resource Lab, helping the instructor teach people how to write resumes, learning about education, about school, and these things. I helped people inside prison. That was my job. I did that. I picked up papers on the highway, did a few jobs. But I spent that much time. These are skills that I have. This work experience counts. So I tell them that because there's a huge disconnect. People just don't know that they don't know. The greatest barrier for me was right between my own ears. And once I was able to see it, I think that's why I'm saying what I really agree with what Q is saying as far as seeing it. When I came home, I saw somebody that was achieving on the level that I wanted to achieve on. My grades were better than his grades when we went to Catholic school. He would get drunk. We would end up in a fight because of him. We always went down Brown. We hung down Brown. But he was running the financial aid department at this school, and I was just like, how the heck did you do that? He was like, James, the more letters I got behind my name, the less my background mattered. And, light bulb moments. So we have to see it. And this is very important for guys coming home. They do not know how they experience. They're already entrepreneurs. Believe me when I tell you. Most people in prison are entrepreneurs. It is just directed in the wrong way.
But we also have the barrier on the outside of the reentry barrier. So yes, there's this problem, but then there is the problem of convincing employers to hire. Am I right?
Yeah, I just want to say this because I live a stone's throw away from Brown University, and the kids in Moses Brown will tell you that they're being taught to run the state. That's what their curriculum teaches them. The kids across the street, directly across the street at Hope School, are being taught to do the jobs to enable them to run the state. And this is the difference. This is the difference. We're not taught finances. We're not taught this stuff. I was fortunate enough to buy property when I came home. I'm getting ready to buy another property. I understand how me owning, and my mother always told me, Oprah said this, God's not making any more land, so make sure you buy some land. This enables me. This enables me to have freedom. I have property near Brown University. I have rental units, and if I'm being exploited today at a place of employment, I do not have to stay there. Where I work is where I choose to work. I don't care if I'm making $100,000 a year. It would not matter to me. I would leave there in a minute just to be someplace where as though I feel as though this is where I belong. And that's freedom. That's why I went back to freedom. So this is what needs to be taught. Sorry, I don't
No,
need
no,
to go on.
it's so excellent, and I have so many questions, but we have a few things we want to do tonight, and I got to make sure I reserve enough time to do it all. You have some cards there. We're going to get to that in a minute. We also want to make sure you get to ask your questions of these brilliant people. But I do want to come back to you, Iskaira, and ask you also about resumes, right? Because you have your Labor X candidates make 1-minute resume videos. Why do you have them do that? I mean, what are they telling employers in that 60 seconds that a paper resume cannot? Or I guess now it's an on-screen resume or one page. I'm always hearing, just do it in one page. I'm thinking, what? I've been working for 25 years. How am I supposed to get all that on one page? So I guess I'll talk to y'all after this. But why do you have people do that video? Educate us here tonight.
Well, so when we started doing this work, we said, if this is going to work, this has to be demand driven, right? Like the system is broken, but before we can blow up this system, we have to understand how to thrive in this system, get some power, and then get people on the inside to help us blow it up, right? That's been my master plan. And so when we sat down with companies, they said a few things that struck us. The first thing is they spend an average of 7 seconds looking at a resume. And so that's why they don't want to look at any. If you have more, they're like, who do you think you are that you deserve more than one page? I'm not even spending my time. And it doesn't matter, like short of having a Nobel Prize or something, that's their attitude. And it's their attitude because, take Google, for example, they get 3 million resumes a year. They just don't have the bandwidth, or so they think, the human power. So that was one thing that was telling. Another thing, we found employers, so there's a training program in the Bronx and in Brooklyn called Perscolas. They were one of our first training partners. And so our model is we partner with these training programs, we aggregate, we polish candidates, we put them on our platform, we promote them to employers. And I said, why did you hire someone here? He said, well, I was looking for tech talent. I did what all the other guys were doing. I was like, well, let me go hire that Columbia engineer that just graduated. I realized that person was really expensive, entitled, and not loyal. They were going to leave me as soon as Google made an offer to anyone else. So then we went the offshoring route, which was a little cheaper. So now we're going, let's say, from like $60 an hour to $40 an hour. My CTO hates that, like the time difference, the lack of productivity, projects take twice as long. And so, I was invited to go speak at one of these things, and I realized that, if I can get someone that has half of what's on my job description, and they show me that they learn quickly, and they can fit in my culture, I'm going to take a chance on this person because this person's going to stick around for at least 2 years, and I'm going to get my money back and then some. So I'm getting loyal talent that hasn't really been given an opportunity in the past, so they're going to work harder than anyone else. And so we basically took that formula. We're like, okay, well then how do we tell a story for candidates where they can show they have a baseline technical skill set, show that they learn quickly, so do a digital portfolio. This shouldn't just be, the realm of designers and architects. Like, we all put out work every single day in everything that we do. And then that last part, which is what was the hardest for me, was this whole culture fit. Culture fit, I think, is just a term for, do we like you? Can we relate? Like, is there a pattern recognition? Can we go have a beer after work? It could be dangerous too. And so we thought more of like, how does this turn into culture add or culture transformation? And to the question you asked, James, we did our first pilot with Google. We showed them 10 candidates from this training program, and they picked one guy who made it through like 5 rounds of interview. And I was like, why'd you pick this person? he was like, his resume told the most complete story. He's like, even if you've done time, there's a way to show that you worked the whole time you were there. Because what happens is then the recruiter has to answer all those questions, and they're not thinking the best. They're like, oh, if this person doesn't have a college degree, well, they must be lazy, or they must, who knows what. Whereas if you take power of your narrative and you tell your story, you don't let this resume, even if you put in and all the time you work, there still might be gaps, or you don't have the fancy letters after your name or the fancy degrees in schools. How do you tell your story and own it? And so for a lot of people, it meant addressing, why don't I have a 4-year degree? People were saying, well, I had to take care of my mom who had cancer, or we were losing our mortgage, or I was homeless, or reasons that have nothing to do with their competency. And actually talk to their resilience and what they can add and how can they help transform that culture. And a lot of companies are talking a big game, right? You'll find 1 or 2 or 3 people that are ready to do that, but there's a system and a formula of how they hire people. They look at this resume, spend 7 seconds, they have algorithms that are looking for the top 10% who went to the top 10 schools and are already working at the top 10 companies. So if you didn't go to Stanford, Harvard, Cornell, and you're not working at Google already, it's going to be hard for you to get that other job, because that's kind of what they're looking for. But people are willing to listen to your story and look at your work samples. And research shows they go from spending 7 seconds on a resume to 3 minutes on a profile that has work samples, that actually has a video resume. And so we get people through more interviews, to get the first interview and then down the pipeline. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done in culture transformation at these companies to get people actually hired and getting them to thrive and rise. But that's a topic for another panel.
Everyone's going to go home and do their 60-second video. All right. So we are now going to get to a fun part of what we think is a very fun part of our program. Jana Oberdorf, are you going to now stand up? I always do this to her when she's not expecting it. So she came tonight not expecting it, and she's going to now stand up. Jana's with Echoing Green. And hi. I have. You want to give her that mic, or shall I give her this one? Go. Okay. We're a casual group here. So Jana is going to talk with you about our project that we gave you as you came in tonight. We're old friends. Well, sort of. We feel like old friends. So why don't you say a little bit about yourself and a little more about Echoing Green? I think everybody here knows about Echoing Green, but why not sing the praises of the organization a little bit more? And then ask folks to join in our challenge, our 10 by 10 by 10.
Yeah, thanks, Jami.
Thank you.
So yeah, we're thrilled to be here tonight and for the next few weeks. Echoing Green, as Jami said earlier, our organization supports social entrepreneurs who are launching their big, bold ideas into the world and really trying to make change happen. And you're hearing from 3 of our incredible Echoing Green fellows tonight. And they are representative of a community of almost 800 social entrepreneurs working here in New York, across the United States, and really around the world on any number of social challenges that you can think of. But in addition to supporting their incredible work, I know our partnership with WNYC, we really want to ask you all to get involved as well and to think about how you can also commit to social change in your community. And that's where these cards come in. We call these our 10 by 10 by 10 cards. And what we want you to do is think about commitments you can make to social change in 10 weeks, 10 months, 10 days, 10 weeks, and 10 months.
Last week I said 10 years.
I almost said 10 years.
That's okay too.
Yeah. But the goal really is to think about something you can commit to, short term, medium term, and long term. Write it down, put it on your refrigerator, look at it every week, and really try to hold yourself accountable. Are you doing the thing you said you were going to do? Are you really committing and taking the action that you want to see in the world? And so that's what we're going to ask you to do with these 10 by 10 by 10 cards.
And hopefully some of you, thank you so much, Jana. And we should say Jana is the VP of Strategic Communications at Echoing Green, and was instrumental in helping come up with this commitment. Last year, it was the anniversary, right, for Echoing Green, which is how we came up with this 10 by 10 by 10. Was it 30 years? Is that right? 30-year anniversary. Congratulations to you. So I guess this is 31 years. Wow. So with that, we've heard from our fellows about how they're taking action with their wonderful organizations, and we'll hear a little bit more from them in a minute. But now it's time for you in the audience to stand up with your commitments. So let's start with 10 days. And our subject tonight is on education. So has anyone in the time that you've been in this room, and Jana just gave you a little more time, has anyone written down, or maybe you want to just riff, on your commitment? What will you do in the next 10 days on the subject of education, to improve education in this country, in your community, in the lives of our children? It can be higher education, right? Thoughts. We have a plan, if you don't have thoughts, to buy you just a little more time. All right, and here's our plan. Who wants to go with your 10-day commitment to education? I knew you would. I knew you would. Where do you go?
I guess I committed.
And after he goes, one of y'all's going, and I will call on you because I used to be a law professor, and we just call on people.
So I committed to thanking a young person for their genius, and I think that it like helps in mental health and wellness, like for someone who might look up to you to think that you have something to thank them for. But I think it's a very kind of like important dialogue that we need to open up with, as older folks to younger folks to say, like, you have something brilliant to contribute to the world. And I acknowledge you and I see you and your brilliance. And I think that gives them confidence to like go back to school and be like, well, Q thinks I'm dope, so I can do this. Yeah.
Now, do you have a specific young person in mind, or you're just thinking, in the next 10 days, I'm going to put my sights on a young person who I'm going to lift up?
There's always a couple young people around. I think, yeah.
That's great.
Definitely. Should I shout him out? Yo, Jamar, what's up, son?
That's great. That's great. That's really great. Okay. All right, now, I'm coming for you. I see a hand. Excellent. Now, last week, and we're going to do it again now, you got the microphone, which is coming for you, and then you stood and said your name. You don't have to say your whole name. We won't make you go on record with your whole name. But tell us who you are and share your commitment.
I'm Tom, and I am a teacher.
Excellent.
And
thank you for that.
I teach at a independent school up in Connecticut, and I just finished working through the Holocaust with my history class. And
what grade level do you teach, Tom?
I teach high school. And it was this weekend when news about Art Jones, the Holocaust denier, running unopposed in a very, he's going to lose the election no matter what he does. But so I just put up his website in class. And I said, hey, let's look through his website. He's got the Holocaust as a joke. It's not real. Right up there, right on his campaign website. And so we sort of stood at this, just stared open-mouthed, agape at this in 2018 after having done all this study. And I just put the challenge to the kids. What am I to do as a voting, privileged white male guy in this society, but this man lives in Illinois? What can I do? And so my 10-day commitment is to follow up with them and say, no, seriously, like what are we going to do here? Well, I'm not willing to let this stand unopposed. I'm not willing to be quiet. So what do you think my course of action is to be, and work that out with my students. So there's my 10-day commitment.
Wow. Thank you, Tom. How big a class is that?
It's a very small group of kids. It's like 9 students.
Wow.
One of them might be writing a bot to take his website down. I don't know.
Thank you, Tom.
We're going to try to keep it legal.
Thank you for that. Anyone else want to share a 10-day commitment in or around the subject of education? There's one here. Hello. Hi.
So I have a younger brother.
Tell us your name.
Oh, sorry, Victoria. My name is
Victoria, weren't you here last week?
I was.
I recognize you.
I can't get enough.
And you shared a commitment last week.
I did.
I love
I'm
it.
full of them.
Thank you,
Full of them.
Victoria.
You're welcome.
Tell us this week's commitment.
So this week's commitment, I have a brother. I'm the oldest of 3, and my youngest brother is a sophomore in high school, and he's like really good at math, and he wants to do computer science, and he's also like on the baseball team and loves anime and all these like crazy things, and it's amazing. But he got a really good exam score for his PSAT for math, but he's struggling a little bit with reading and writing. So I am going to commit to sending him like an article online from NPR or another publisher, and kind of challenge him to kind of read it and get back to me on kind of summaries about what he did, just to help him, improve, and also affirm him as a black boy and black man, soon to be black man growing up, and going through the education system, that he's like amazing and he can do all these amazing things, and help him kind of realize and understand that as he goes through. So
How
that's
old
it.
is he, Victoria?
He is 15.
Oh, my son is 15.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Tough age.
Yes.
But he's lucky to have you as a sister.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Anyone else? Those are 2 tough ones to follow. Oh, excellent. Front row, Ricardo.
I just want to make a point.
Yes.
Anyway, Brooklyn in the house.
Brooklyn.
First of all, I've just retired. I was an educator for 30-something years.
You have a beautiful voice. Your students were lucky.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us your name, teacher?
Yes, Rosalind.
Rosalind.
I just want to say that I have a nephew. He's 20 years old. And I want to talk about this readiness, career readiness. And what I found out, and I'm also part of the New York City DOE, I found out that there was so much pressure on getting kids to go to college that there was not enough for those so-called vocational 2-year programs. So anyway, I just want to use the example of my nephew. Difficulty going to school, but because of our support, he got through high school. Now he tried to get through college, didn't work. So now he's in Orlando, Florida, taking like an 18-month course repairing motorcycles. And this is what's lacking, I believe. And being a New Yorker, who's going to repair our trains? Who's going to repair our bridges? And I don't see any of these students in the Department of Transit, Department of Bridges, helping to build up our city. So, not to say that the academic student that's so-called ready for 4-year college, we also need to train our kids for those types of training. Thank you.
And Rosalind, am I not correct that President Obama made this point in one of his speeches on education, that not everyone is intended to go to 4-year college, that some people are meant for vocational training and meant for community college, and that we really need to respect everyone's educational value?
Yes.
I mean, I'm not an educator, but I recall that in one of his speeches in his second term.
Yes. I can agree with Ms. Jimenez. Our students, unfortunately for me, being in school, teaching for so many years, as well as doing administrative work, our kids can't even pass Regents exams over and over again. And it's, anyway, it's painful to see them taking their living environment and just courses that are not so much a segue into the things that they can do in 2 years or training. Thank you very much.
If I may,
Yeah. Hardeem, we're here for you.
Sorry.
You're the panelist.
I resonate with that so much with what you just said. The young man I just shouted out, brilliant young man. It might not show on his grades, right? And I felt the type of way about saying, well, I don't want you coming back here working unless your grades are back, on par. When the work that he was doing while he was with us, brilliant work, right? This guy's done a website for a local community garden leader. He's done videography and photography for events in the community. He's helping to develop a game for another organization. His resume. He's 16. His resume. It looks like he's coming after my job. But he's 16, and to try to weigh via the meritocracy that exists his value in the workforce. It's a huge discredit to a lot of the young people that are hustling and have so much talent.
Thank you, Rosalind, for your comments. Okay, I want to leave some time for your questions, so I'm going to move on to the 10-week commitment. That's the midterm. I see someone, Ricardo, in the back with a hand up. She was ready to go with that 10-week commitment before I even got the question out. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Christian. I'm a college professor. I teach at a community college in Westchester.
Excellent.
To your point about the lack of shorter term training that's leading directly to employment, I'm the chair of the paralegal program at the college where I work. Paralegal is one of those fields where you don't have to have any type of degree. You really don't have to have a high school diploma. I try not to tell them that, right? And I don't tell them that you don't need the certificate and you don't need the associate's degree. We've created a pathway, right? So they start off with something that's entry level that may not require credentials, and we try to encourage them to continue their academic path leading to what we tell them is the judge, right? If you start as a paralegal, the end of that path is judge. We let them set their eye on that prize and hope to get there. Anything in between would be great, right? Paralegals make good money. But I will say, I'm being challenged right now with the ongoing structural difficulties with regard to administration at certain institutions. I'm in my 4th year at the college where I am. My teaching record has been stellar, but I got caught up in some political things at the campus and have been relieved of my position for next year. And my colleagues are very shocked. I'm by far one of the best faculty members on campus, not because of my credentials, but because of my commitment to the students. And so what I'm noticing is, for some of us who are coming up who may be first generation educated, who have achieved much, we lose ourselves in the shuffle of how to navigate the waters within the institution. And that's consistently a problem. And so I'm just putting that out there, is that one way that we can better prepare our students, our young people, is to understand that those soft skills and a lot of that political stuff can still be a dead end for you, regardless of your credentials. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for the question, and it's a complicated one, right? I mean, was that a question, a comment, a little of both?
Okay, so my 10-week is that I'm writing
Oh, right, I forgot. I asked you for commitment.
Yes.
You're so compelling that I was taking
apologize.
No, let's hear your commitment and then we'll
My commitment is that I was going to let it go. And because I'm what do you call it? Probationary. I don't have tenure. They keep telling me it's fine. No, I'm going to write a well-written letter, at least one, and see if it can make a difference. I don't want people to come behind me and have the same problem. So I'm going to try. That's my 10-week, is that I'm going to write a letter and see if I can get some movement. Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. The soft skills, huh? Tough. Yeah. Anyone?
So,
Quoting.
I think the soft skills come with employment, and the earlier you get employed, the easier it is to kind of like gain those skills. I think that it goes back to what I was saying before. You know, studies show that the younger, if you're employed in your teenage years, you're more likely to be civically engaged. You're more likely to gain and maintain a job when you're of age, and you're more than likely going to earn more at your job. So if we're actively seeking to employ and create spaces for mentorship in their teenage years, these soft skills will come. I think by the numbers, we just need millions of more opportunities for young people.
The other phrase that you used, where's she? Is first generation.
Mm-hmm.
That phrase really hit me. First generation.
So I want to add to Cordine's point about what can help accelerate the learning of these soft skills. I think, so what we're seeing, apprenticeships have been the domain usually of blue-collar industries, and we're now seeing them in tech and in other places. And what an apprenticeship is just a safer space to work and earn, but also to learn. And it goes a step beyond mentoring. So mentoring could be just someone telling you, but, the people that succeed are people who have champions and people who have sponsorship. So those are different levels of engagement with someone. I think we use the term mentoring broadly sometimes to define all those things, but I've certainly had mentors who have gone to coffee with me and or lunch once or twice.
And you didn't realize they were mentors sometimes.
Well, and have how can I help? Do you have any questions? And I'm like, you don't know what you don't know, right? So that's one thing. Having a champion is someone who's actively there, creating opportunities for you and pulling you ahead. And then having a sponsor is someone who's saying, I'm going to pay for you to go take this course. Like I had a sponsor in college, right? So I was part of this mentoring program, and people had different levels of mentors. My mentor paid for an internship. He's like, look, here are 3 paths that I can help you in. If you want to go the law school route, if you want to go the business school route, and I think journalism was a third one. So he's like, if you want an internship at one of these places, I will pay you $15 an hour for 10 weeks to go figure out, what you want to do and where you want to thrive. And I went into finance for 2 summers and then realized I was not going to Wall Street. I hated it. But someone sponsored me, right? That went beyond. And sure, you don't need, $3,000 every summer to sponsor. There are other ways. We all sit in positions of power where we can help, champion people and sponsor them and actually create opportunities for them that have long-lasting impacts. And then how do we make that into a system where, I think we're all trying to do this with the organizations that we're doing.
That's what your organizations
right.
are.
But I think everyone individually can go and champion and sponsor someone.
That's what Echoing Green is, really. Okay, one more 10-week commitment. Oh, good. Let's go to another side of the room. Thank you for bringing my attention over here.
Hi, my name is Samantha. I work for Teach for All, and I used to work with a group of students at a school that I used to work with, and I recently passed along a job opportunity to them, and they sent me some of their CVs. And some of them were really strong, and some of them needed some work, and I helped them a little bit. But, it was just like 20 minutes of work. And I think over the next 10 weeks, I can reach out to many more of those girls. And, now they're in their early 20s. They're looking for jobs. And I think there's still room in their lives, similar to what you were just speaking about, where we can actually do a lot more to help them on that next phase. So over the next 10 weeks, I want to reach out to more of them, look at their CVs, see how those are going, see where I can help, talk to them, ask real questions about what they're trying to do in their careers, and help to push them on that, see what connections we can make, and just re-engage in their search now that they're really looking for jobs and they need more people to help them. So I sort of, checked out, and so over the next 10 weeks I commit to checking back in.
That's fantastic. Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Samantha. All right, and that takes us to the 10-month commitment, which takes us to November, the election.
Oh, I need to rewrite mine.
I know, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
So now that's just one day, but there's a lot you could do between now and the election. So who has a 10-month commitment, something you're going to do between now and November 2018? Anybody? Great. We're all over the room tonight. Excellent.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. My name is Ellen, and removing the election context that you put in my mind, I had written one down already.
Good.
So I very recently, 2 weeks ago, joined the founding board of a school that plans to open in Jamaica, Queens, which was my first home when I moved to New York from Rhode Island, actually. And over the next 10 months, I want to a big part of starting a school, a charter school, is making sure, at least for me, that you're not kind of parachuting in and saying, this is what the community needs. Making sure that we're really, really in tune with like what the community that the school is seeking to serve needs. And so doing that really intentional and in a lot of ways time-consuming work, but going to community events, walking around, meeting people, and getting that good feedback of what the school really needs to look like outside of our perspective as educators of, this will help. And so I'm committing to doing that work over the next 10 months.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another 10-month commitment, middle of the room. He's coming.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dylan, and just want to share my 10-month commitment. So I'm a Teach for America alumni. I taught 2 years in Baltimore. Recently, I've worked the last 2 or 3 years in the financial services industry, but recently committed to teaching at a school in Brownsville, a charter school, for this coming school year. So getting back into the classroom to teach again.
You left financial services, huh?
Yeah.
I see a trend.
Thank you very much for that. So that's 2 10-month commitments, very, very specific on education, excellent. And we had a good 10-week commitment, re-engaging. One more 10-month commitment? Come on, you can do it. I can put my fellows back on the spot. Oh, excellent. Great. Taking us to November.
Hi, my name is Ron, and my whole life I've been a thinker. That's who I am.
That's
I know
a good
who
thing.
I am. But I recently sort of put out a ad, thinker desperately in need of doers. Because I just realized, as getting older, you got to leave some sort of a legacy. So I was very fortunate to hook up with a beautiful man from South Africa who, in his spare time over the last 10 years, created math clubs for the disadvantaged children in South Africa so that in the very early grades, even pre-K and K, they don't fall so far behind that they never ever get a chance to catch up. And, so when he came to New York and told me about it, and he said, we could do this here too, I said, aha, I think I've found my doer. And so we're having a meetup towards the end of the month, and I'll be happy to tell people about the details after the meeting. But we would like to begin a program of math clubs and after-school programs in the public schools for really young children so that the disadvantages they suffer at home are mitigated. And as the lady also said, we don't want to parachute in, so we want to make sure that the community wants us, et cetera, et cetera. But, I'm hoping that we're going to get some people to come to our meetup, and because you can't do anything without people.
Fantastic. I wish I'd known you 45 years ago. You could have parachuted into my living room. My math skills, terrible. That's really fantastic, Ron. That's really fantastic. What do you all think about the 10 by 10 by 10 commitments? Pretty great. I think now everybody snaps. What's with the snapping? I say big round of applause. All right. So I wisely left time for questions for I still have a ton of questions, but rather than taking up all the time for my questions, I bet you have some questions for our panel, either about your own work that you're doing. Maybe you want to share that with the room, as Rosalind did. Fabulous. Or maybe you have some questions about your work and want to get some inspiration from the panel. But I still love it if you'd share who you are and what you're doing. Please.
Hi, I am Sydney.
Hi, Sydney.
I am here as a champion and cheerleader for Iscaida Jimenez.
Oh, fabulous.
My best friend since 4th grade.
I taught her English. So my question is actually for each of you, because I'm extremely curious. How has this current position in your life changed you? What is something that in this position of power you've noticed you've changed about yourself, or you've learned or evolved into as a result of your own labor of love, to use Iscaida's words?
Who would you like to go first?
I would like the gentleman to go first and the queen to go last.
How's this changed? I guess for me, I mean, I'm more accountable. I have to think a little bit more closely before I make decisions. I have to welcome more feedback. It's not just me. I'm not in this alone. It's more difficult in some senses, because when you're accountable to others, you really have to watch what you do, watch what you say. I've learned a lot more patience, tolerance, and one of the things I'm learning, especially with leadership, is to take a step back. And I think I forget your name, but to really not push what I think my will is for people onto people. I can have the greatest idea in the world, but if it's not what the people taking part in my services are looking for, I really need to reevaluate that. So to be more objective also. Those are some of the things that I've learned.
Unlike James, I don't have beautiful children. So, to some extent, the office and the kids that come in are extension of children that I have in the world, I suppose. And I've learned how to model behavior. I don't do it well. I'm trying to learn, I should say, how to model behavior because of that accountability one, and having people that look up to you, whereas a couple years ago I was just by myself, like I was accountable for myself, and I think that helps me to be reflective about every action that I make in the world, but particularly in the office.
So for me, my journey has gone from thinking that college and a great education was a ticket out, and it was my responsibility to succeed for myself and for my family. And so kind of trying to gain power that way, like, putting my individual success as a priority so that I can be in a position of power. And then knowing that I'm most powerful when I'm driven by purpose is kind of the journey. And where I am now, I'm going to be most effective when I have both power and purpose. So purpose alone, when you're preaching to the choir sometime, sure, it makes you feel good. But bringing this message to, Middle America, the Deep South, places where the face of poverty may look different in terms of color or creed, but the system, the people are starting to realize it's rigged against poor white people too in this country, bringing it into very uncomfortable places to try and get allies and build more power. Power is not enough, passion's not enough. Combining those two, trying to put yourself in a position, like driven by passion, but also in a position of power where you can try and, change people's hearts first, so that you can change their minds. It's kind of the journey that I've walked.
Great answers. Anyone else have a question or a comment?
I'm Christian. Remember, I'm losing my job next year, so I'm here to pick your brains. I've been looking at Echo and Green for several years. I'm naturally a social justice person. My family for generations have been activists. Didn't necessarily know how to do it in a way that was profitable or sustainable. So that's where we are now, is trying to figure out, and I think Echo and Green has something to add to that. So I've been looking at the organization for years. Do you have any pointers for those of us who are considering applying? Right? I mean, I know that there's a lot of tutorials, there's videos, there's lots of things there, but if you could go back and you were sitting in this audience, what would you tell yourself now before you applied that you could tell me now? Is that the right question?
So one advice that I give to folks who apply and are trying to get through the different stages of the application is you'd be surprised how little you need to start the work that you want to set out to do, like whatever that idea is. I have come up with a formula that I see was worked for people, but this is not the formula that's being taught. And so you don't need to first raise a lot of money or get 1,000 people hired. Like in my case, that's the measure of success. But this thing in terms of 100, talk to 100 people about your idea, interview them and see what they think, and then draw something or put pictures together and then show it to another 100 people and see what they would do or how they would use it. Get out there and start getting feedback, start putting stuff together with with whatever it is that you have, whether it's on a Sunday or, after your third full-time job. Because then you actually, so you need real passion and, and a sense of commitment for this work that you're doing. Echo and Green is phenomenal at figuring out who wants to parachute in and who actually comes from a place of love and a place of we're doing this for the right reason. And aside from that, talking to people, sending surveys, drawing sketches, there are a bunch of, and I'm happy to kind of talk depending on what your idea is offline, to give you a sense of what it is that you're trying to do and what problem is you're trying to solve, because you'll find out, well, maybe this is not the way to solve this problem, or there are 100 people out there I didn't even know are trying to solve this problem. Can I get with them? So that journey of discovery helps you tell a better story when you actually go and apply. So having that conviction, that purpose, but also that rule of 100. So, do 100 surveys, build something and have 100 people test it and give you some sort of feedback. And, try and see if someone will give you a commitment to give you $1. If I build this, will you give me $1 so that I can build it as a nonprofit, or will you pay $1 for this? To try and get some real feelers so that your idea has legs to at least crawl on when you're ready for the application. Because we're all full of great ideas. They want to see that you're not just talking the talk, you're about to walk this walk.
And it's good advice for entrepreneurial endeavors generally and for life endeavors. Yeah. Really test it out, show your passion, and test your passion for yourself, right? Yeah. Make sure that you really you're hungry. Yeah. You're hungry. I want to thank our three fellows, right? Iscaira Jimenez, Quardine Lewis Allen, Q. Can I call you Q now?
You sure may.
All right. And James Monteiro. Labor X, Made in Brownsville, and Reentry Campus. Thank you, three. They're in different orders. They're sitting in different order. But I know who belongs with which organization. I know who was made in Brownsville. I also want to say a very big thank you to Cheryl Dorsey and her wonderful team at Echoing Green. And thank you, Jana Oberdorf, for doing that last-minute thing with the cards. Thank you all very, very much for coming. We'll be here next Tuesday at 7 for the third installment in the series. The fellows that are coming next week are working on climate change solutions. So we hope you'll be with us. Thank you.
Thank you.